There we go. I had my camera on.
Zoom recording. There we go.
Yeah.
All right, so we're recording. Thank you very much, Karen. So, to start, we acknowledge that we are on the indigenous land of Coast Salish peoples who have reserved treaty rights to this land, specifically the Duwamish and the Snoqualmie Indian tribes. We thank these caretakers of this land who have lived and continue to live here since time immemorial. And we also recognize that you might be tuning in from somewhere else, we will send out a map tomorrow in our follow-up post to you, where you can look up the native lands of wherever it is that you happen to live. So that's where we are. And this is a little bit about who we are. We are the Issaquah History Museums. We were founded in 1972, and we strive to discover, preserve, and share Issaquah's history and heritage. So during what I call the before times, we did that by doing museum exhibits and doing in-person programming where people could get up and personal with history. And of course, the pandemic has made that impossible, but as I was just remarking earlier, there are some real benefits to having virtual programming. Nobody needs to leave their house. Nobody needs to find parking. Nobody has to worry about being late because of the traffic. So there are some benefits. So this is our first virtual event of 2021. I hope it's not the last one that you check out with us. And we've got a whole series coming up, and I'll talk a little bit later about what we have planned for March. I'd like to do some staff introductions. Karen Gath is here tonight, our program and volunteer coordinator. She's going to be helping out when we get to question and answers. Kayla Boland, our administrative and communications coordinator, is here. She may be the one who lured you into attending this event tonight with one of her fabulous social media ads. Julie Hunter is our collections manager. She helps make sure all the things that we are talking about tonight, whether they're letters or oral histories or garrison caps or what have you, she makes sure they're organized and taken care of. We also have some volunteers on tap with us tonight. We are a very volunteer-based organization. We rely heavily on volunteers to make things happen. And we've got some volunteer actors joining us tonight. John Schmay will be playing Rob Pickering. Dan Shuey will be playing Bill Evans. Melissa Graham will be playing Minnie Wilson. And Tyler Lombardo will be playing Jake Schomburg. We also receive sustaining support from the city of Issaquah and from For Culture and from community members like you. Thank you for making a donation to attend this program tonight. We really appreciate it.
Erica?
Yeah.
Some people are having some issues with the picture. There's some gray lines across. Does anybody else have that issue right now across the PowerPoint? Okay.
That's
yes.
the other things that are on your computer, whoever's presenting. If it's you, Erica, it's usually other screens.
Okay.
If you refresh the screen or maybe maximize and minimize it, they might go away.
I'm going to pause share. Actually, I'm going to stop share. I'm going to go out and I'm going to get rid of a bunch of stuff that I have open.
Yeah. That should...
okay, so I can't minimize Zoom. I'm a lots of screens open, lots of tabs open kind of gal. So
yes.
See if I can get down to a manageable level of screen detritus.
But you're not sharing allows us to see everybody. Hello, romantic people.
Boy, some of this stuff hasn't been closed in a while.
That's right. That's what we should be doing. We should be like, I can play. There you go.
All right. Let's try this again. Thank you for being patient with us. I will share screen. From current slide.
There's still one across the top.
Yep.
It's a long rectangular. Takes up a
Oop, now
box.
it's on the bottom.
Now it's on the
Okay, so that's my Zoom controls. I wonder if I can.
You can close those.
I'm not sure how to physically close this. I apologize.
Are you seeing it, Erica?
I'm not. All I'm seeing is my Zoom control bar thing.
Okay.
Better at the bottom.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not bad at the bottom where it is right now.
Okay. All right.
Can you move it any further down, or is that as far down as it goes?
This is as far down as it goes.
I think that should probably be okay.
Okay.
Oh,
If anyone has any issues, just maybe say it in the chat. Then Erica can read if it's blocking something.
Right. Yeah. Sorry. Can we live with it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
We can live with it.
All right. Thank you, folks. So tonight we're talking about love. We're talking about a lot of the emotions that come along with love, some of the emotions that can overwhelm love, and we're sharing stories about the human condition. We're delving into a lot of folks sharing their innermost thoughts with us. So you may feel things tonight. Your heartstrings may be tugged. You may find yourself moved. We hope that's the case. I do want to acknowledge that the love stories we're sharing tonight represent white, married, heteronormative couples. We are actively seeking out the love and life stories of people of color and LGBTQ plus people in Issaquah. So if you have an Issaquah love story that you would like to share with us, please feel free to get in touch. Our email address is info@issaquahhistory.org, and we are interested in including your love stories in our archives. So tonight's program draws heavily on our oral history collection. We did a number of oral histories in the early 2000s, and the following two stories come from those oral histories. And both of them feature lifelong Issaquah residents talking about their experiences during World War II, and then about meeting the women, excuse me, who would go on to become their respective wives. So first we'll hear from Rob Pickering, whose role is being played tonight by John Schmay in an encore performance from our September 2020 History Happy Hour. Take it away, John.
Well, thank you. Back in the 40s, I was in the war. They shipped me overseas, and when I came back, they sent me to DC, but I first came to Baltimore, and some of us went to town that night. And they had that boat that went up the Patuxent River where they danced. And I went on that thing and I met this chick. Oh, Jesus, you know. So that was really the first one. She was with some guy, but I took her away and whatever. She lived in a boarding house in Washington, D.C., working for the government. Now, I just come from the Pacific. Yeah. Anyway, I took her home to this boarding house and I said, well, I'd like to see you again. She said, okay. So I made a date with her a couple days later because I could go at night where I was. And the base was 60 miles away. I had to hitchhike in. I went in and I walked up to her room and there was a bench outside this hall. And there was 4 or 5 guys sitting there. I knocked on the door and this gal come to the door and I says, is Kitty here? And she says, you're about the 6th one that's asked. See all these guys? They're all waiting for her too. I says, what? What do you mean they're waiting for her? And these guys, one of them says to me, good luck, fella. And I says, what the hell is that? He says, well, that's what Kitty does. Well, I says, I don't really know her that well. I took her away from some guy a couple of nights ago on a boat. We'll join the crowd because she gets a group together and then she picks the one she wants. I says, oh, for Christ's sake. I turned around and I left. I says, tell her hi. I turned around and walked down the hall, down the flight of stairs, and I was going out the hall, and there was a door to a room open. And there was 2, 3 girls standing there, and one of them was standing just inside the door with an ironing a dress. And I walked by, and she says, oh, I just come from the Pacific now, and I was just tan, and my hair was yellow, mass of blonde hair. And she says, can I have a curl? And she grabbed a pair of scissors and says, I want a curl. I didn't know her, and I says, I don't care. So she come out and she whacked the curl off. And I said, well, okay. And she went back to the room, and I went down this hall and out the building and down the sidewalk. I got a block or two down the sidewalk, and I thought, why the hell didn't I ask her to go out? Good looking gal. So I got on the telephone down there and I called back to this building. I says, I don't know who I'm supposed to talk to, but I said, she's so and so on the second floor and that. And I said, I don't know her name. And they said, well, you might know who you're talking about. So pretty soon this gal got on the phone and she says, hello. And I says, hey, I'm that sailor. You just cut that lock of hair off about 20 minutes ago. And I want to know if you'd like to go out. Oh, she says. Well, I've got a cousin staying with me here. And I says, well, that's all right. I'll take both of you. And she says, oh, okay, yeah, I'd like to. And I says, all right, I'll be up there about 20 minutes. And she says, all right. So I went back up, took her and her girlfriend out. I was walking down the street, and then the girl met a soldier that she knew a little bit. So we went to a Danny Kaye movie and had a hamburger, and I took them back. And that was my wife. Now I didn't marry her there. I took her out. This was in 1946. Naomi. I took her out, maybe 5 times. We didn't go anywhere. I didn't have any money. We just go down the street, go to a movie or some damn thing, because I was getting ready to go to the school to go to China when they dropped the atomic bomb and school was canceled. I got discharged. Otherwise, if I'd have went to China, I probably wouldn't be here today. And so when they dropped the bomb, everybody did their thing. And I came into town and I met Naomi and I said, well, I just got my orders for discharge and that's in Norman, Oklahoma, I says, and I've got to take a plane out in the morning. So I come to say goodbye. We sat down on this little porch in front of this building and she says, I'm never going to see you again. And I said, no, yeah, you will. She says, oh, I know you sailors. No, I says, I'll be back. So I went out to Norman, Oklahoma, and got discharged. They said, take all your ribbons off and all that. Being gone 4 years and what I went through, I don't know. I couldn't wait to get home and get back down to the barn. And, oh yeah, you grow up a lot. You better grow up. Yeah, there was no boat with whistles. There's nobody with a band. There was nothing. They dumped me off in San Francisco. When I got off that plane in San Francisco and I walked out of the airport, I said to the guys with me, hey, I'm going to kiss the first girl that walks down this sidewalk. And we had no more said that than some gal, I don't know, she might have been 35 or 40, came walking down the sidewalk and I just says, honey, you're it. And I grabbed her and bent her over and kissed her. She must have liked it because she says, oh. Yeah, that was it. I could have got slapped too, I guess. I hitchhiked away and went to an army base in Oakland, Oklahoma, California. And they were flying a transport up to Sandpoint. And I says, hey, can I get a ride? And he said, well, come on, get on the damn thing. And it was full of mail bags and stuff. There was a couple other guys too. And we got on and sat on these mail bags and got off at the old Sandpoint down here in Seattle. And from that, I hitchhiked into Seattle, got on a telephone, and I called the house. They didn't know I was coming home. Mom was squealing and all that stuff, and they came and picked me up. After I was home a bit, I thought, well, I think I'll hitchhike back and see Naomi. So I hitchhiked all the way back to Washington, D.C., rented a hotel room in some part of town there, and went and seen her for a couple of days. When she was working, I left and I hitchhiked all the way back home. Went all the way up through Michigan and all the way across the Dakotas in the middle of the goddamn winter. Come home, I'd call her on the telephone once in a while, the old ring phone, Wrote a letter once in a while. I was going out here, and she was going out back in Dayton, Ohio. So that Christmas, I called her on the phone and I said, hey, why don't you get on a plane and come out here for Christmas? You'd never been any place out of your town other than that little jaunt to Washington, D.C. Come out and see a good part of the country. Oh, she says, I'll do that. So she threw her stuff in a suitcase, got on a plane, flew out here, and I picked her up. I didn't know she'd quit her job. She quit her job, and we got married in 2 weeks, and she's never been back. 60 years ago. And that's my wife, Naomi.
Thank you so much. So Rob and Naomi, or Ray, as she was more often known, were married until Rob passed away in 2017. So they were together for just about 70 years. And we can't find a date for Ray's passing, but I believe she passed shortly after Rob did in 2017. So now we're going to move to our next World War II vet. Bill Evans also grew up in Issaquah, and during this clip, he actually talks about one of the few times in his life that he did not live in Issaquah. So I'm going to hand it over to Dan Shuey for his encore performance as Bill Evans.
How did I meet my wife? Well, that was one key point right there in how I got back to normal after the war. I got to work for the Navy, decommissioning ships for the Navy at the end of the war. I had to take a bus from Beacon Avenue out to Pier 91 to get my assignments every day, to go out with a crew and unload guns and so forth off the ships. A lot of minesweepers were in town and that sort of thing. The Navy moored ships all over the coast so they could dismantle them and stuff and surplus them. So I'd take the bus every morning at the same time, like everybody else going to work. So I was up at the north end by 8 o'clock. I got to be on the same bus every day with the same people, all going to work to get their jobs done at the same time. Well, I met a gal who was a real chatty girl, probably 19 or so, and she was yakking all the time. Because she got on the bus 6 or 8 blocks before me, she always got a seat at the back end of the bus. When people were getting on after you, they're pushing. So you're standing up and they're pushing you to the back to make more room, you know? So I knew her just because she was a chatty type of person. Well, this one day, I got on the bus, pushed back with the crowd, always standing up, and I saw her. And then I saw the girl next to her. It was love at first sight. But it took me 2 years to have enough nerve to ask her out. And I just happened to have her picture in my truck if you want to see it before you leave, because she's a real pretty girl. Of course, she was 5 years younger than me. She was beautiful then. She's a white-haired lady now. I noticed her eyes mostly. Beautiful brown eyes, real striking eyes. I didn't notice her hair or anything until after I got used to her a little bit. Didn't know a thing about her figure until we'd been going together for months. So it wasn't a sexual attraction. It just clicked. Her personality was fantastic. I always like to have fun. She was a fun gal. We were married in 1948.
Thanks, Dan. So Bill and Betty were together until his death in 2006. So that was 58 years. A lot of long marriages here tonight that we're talking about. I do want to change gears a little bit. Our next story is going to be a bit of a dash of vinegar to cut through some of the sweetness. Because as we all probably know as well, love does not always work out. Marriage does not always work out. Sometimes things go wrong, and sometimes things go horribly wrong. And in the next couple that we're going to be talking about, it would be hard to imagine a less ideal partnership or how things could have gone any wronger than they did. So, but in the immortal words of the Jay Giles Band, sometimes love stinks. So we're going to talk about Magdalena and Henry Werner. So the story starts with these two folks. These are not Henry or Magdalena. This is Wilhelm Gottlieb Goebel and his wife, Sophia Hug Goebel. They were the parents of Mary Magdalena Goebel, and we will refer to her as Magdalena. That's how she went at the time of this story. So she was the daughter of German immigrants and one of at least 7 children. And just before her 16th birthday, Magdalena married Henry Werner. So like her parents, Henry Werner was a German immigrant. He was a farmer near Monaghan, which is a town on East Lake Sammamish. And Henry was significantly older than Magdalena. She was just 16 when they married, and he, on the other hand, was 40 years old. So they married in 1904, and within the next year, they had a son named Henry Wilhelm after his father. He went by the name Wilhelm. And by the time the 1910 census was taken, children Carl and Martha had joined the family. And then in 1912, baby Agnes was born. And Agnes was around 18 months during the course of the events that I'm about to describe. So this is the Werner house. This is a picture taken out of a newspaper, which is why the quality is not great. The Werner house was located near Beaver Lake, which is up on the Sammamish Plateau. And on the morning of March 2nd, 1914, Henry Werner was found in his barn, having been brutally murdered, frankly. And during the next few days, of course, authorities in this very out of the way place near Issaquah came and questioned Henry's wife, Magdalena, and his oldest son, Wilhelm, who was 8 at the time, trying to figure out what exactly had happened. So 8-year-old Wilhelm told the Seattle deputies that he was standing on the porch and heard men arguing in the barn. But his mother told him not to investigate, that it was probably just Henry yelling at the cow and to stay out of there. She later told deputies that she thought that her husband was talking about a land deal with a neighbor, and that's what all the shouting was about. Again, these are from the newspaper. One is a picture of the Werner barn. X marks the door behind which the murder was committed. So as I said, these images were presented in the newspaper to kind of help people visualize the scene of the crime. So there were some discrepancies in the newspaper accounts, as was often the case in that time. One newspaper reported that little Wilhelm found his father's body and ran to the house to tell his mother, where another newspaper said that Magdalena saw a man running out of the barn, and then she went into the barn to find her husband's body. Later during the trial, another story emerges, which is that Wilhelm sees a man running from the barn. In any case, these investigations continue, and they decide that Magdalena may have had something to do with the murder, and she's arrested. So shortly after her arrest, so this is a map showing kind of roughly where Beaver Lake is in relation to, you can see Lake Sammamish Park down near the south. No, yes, southwest, west-east. So shortly after her arrest, Magdalena told a reporter that she knew the identity of the man who had killed her husband, and that he had committed the murder to protect her, and that he only killed Henry because he felt sorry for her and to end her torment and suffering. So according to Magdalena, her life with Henry Werner was not a happy one. She was very lonely and miserable, being stuck way out on this farm near Beaver Lake. She said that Henry didn't let her go anywhere, and that she'd asked him before for a divorce and hoped to keep her children with her, but that he refused to consider it. The newspapers also speculated about the 24-year age gap between the two. And so then in March, a few days later, we have a new character come on the scene. On March 6th, Marshal Elmer Baxter arrested an Italian man named Henry Pallone, also known as Henry Smith. Pallone was held in the Issaquah jail, which is still standing today. This particular jail was in use from 1914 till 1930, and it's still standing behind the Gilman Town Hall. The newspaper suggested that Henry had been arrested because he was having an affair with Magdalena. Another newspaper stated that Henry Werner had found love letters between Magdalena and a variety of other suitors, and had given the letters to his brother for safekeeping. And then, of course, after the murder came to light, the brother brought the letters out and kind of made them public. So the love letters raised some questions about Magdalena's character, and some of her neighbors were quick to chime in and let people know that they thought that she was responsible for the deaths of several dogs who'd been chasing her sheep. I'm going to offer the editorial note that in a small rural place where you're farming, you might want to keep your sheep safe from dogs. But anyway, that's a side issue, and we don't need to get into that here. But so after her arrest, Magdalena became increasingly despondent in jail. She wouldn't eat, she wouldn't talk, and they began to fear for her welfare. And so the prison matron allowed her to have baby Agnes, again, who was 18 months old, with her in the jail cell. And that perked her up. for a little while, but eventually that living situation was untenable, and Agnes was moved to a, quote, juvenile detention center, end quote, which kind of shows you that they really didn't have the facilities to deal with a perpetrator who had a child that they were responsible for. So then we have another man on the scene. Henry Smith is sort of forgotten, and suddenly we become interested in a man named Frank Piccone. So Magdalena, Mrs. Werner, has identified Frank Piccone as somebody that she made a deal with to commit the murder. So the authorities announced that they've got a confession from Magdalena, and they're now on the hunt for Frank Piccone, and they're offering a $500 reward toward his capture. So there are rumors of his sighting near Centralia. People all over Northwest Washington are searching for Frank, and he finally cropped up in Clay Elum. So reportedly, he had a bloodstained knife and bloodstained handkerchief with him. So apparently he told a friend in Clay Elum that he was looking for a spot to lay low because he had some trouble in King County. And instead of giving him a place to lay low, his friend turned him into the authorities. And so that's how Frank came to be in jail. So after Frank was arrested, Magdalena made a positive identification of him, and they were both arraigned on charges of first-degree murder. So presumably this shifted all the blame away from Henry Paulone, and he kind of disappears out of the story. So with all this coverage in the newspaper and this sort of sensationalization of the news story that the papers did, the trial itself was a pretty hot ticket. So people were standing in line at 7 in the morning to try and get into the trial. The place was packed. The bailiff was having a hard time keeping order because there were so many people there. Apparently, one gentleman got $25 stolen by a pickpocket while he was trying to find a seat. 3 young women sitting on a bench were tumbled to the ground when the bench that they were sitting on broke. So it was really just a very, quite the sensational media event. So on May 22nd, the jury came to a conclusion after deliberating for just 2 hours and 45 minutes. The verdict was not guilty. The prosecution was shocked because, of course, they had obtained a confession from Magdalena stating that she had paid Frank Piccone to kill her husband. But the fact that she appeared to be such a sympathetic character, this lonely, abused woman, the sympathies that the jury had for her trumped the confession that the prosecutors brought forth. So, and at the end of the trial, actually people in the jury stood in line to shake Magdalena's hand and kind of express their esteem for her. So Magdalena was done. She was no longer under arrest, and she was able to move to Kitsap County, where she was looking for and found work at a logging camp. So she was working as a cook, but she was still having to return to Seattle for one sad occasion, and that was the trial of Frank Piccone, her supposed accomplice. So Frank Piccone's trial began on June 8th, and of course Magdalena and young Wilhelm, again age 8, were both called upon to testify, and Wilhelm proved to be the star witness. He held everyone captivated as he described how Frank Piccone was the man that he saw running from the barn that morning of his father's murder. So surprisingly, Frank Piccone was acquitted by the jury in roughly 20 minutes, leaving the question of who murdered Henry Werner wide open, and nobody really getting any punishment for it. Frank Piccone would also go on to sue the Seattle Post-Intelligencer in a libel suit for some of the things that they published about him during the time of the trial. And what about Magdalena? Not only did she find a job on Kitsap Peninsula, she found love again. So in August, just 3 or 4 months after her husband's murder, she met a logger named Benjamin Miller at the logging camp where she was working, and they wanted to get married. And unfortunately, when they went to Seattle to go before the Superior Court to get married, the requirement that they produce witnesses sort of flummoxed them both. So Magdalena figured, well, she knew some deputies, she knew where to find them. She went down the hall and tried to ask some of the deputies who she'd gotten to know during her arrest and imprisonment if they would come be her witnesses. And they refused, which made her angry, which I can't say that I blame her. She was just trying to get a basic legal task accomplished. So the newspaper article that was written about the incident notes that Mrs. Werner, 26 years old and the mother of several children, was angered when told she would have to obtain a witness. So they don't mention this part in the newspaper, but she did come back a few days later, and she brought her parents, and her parents stood up and witnessed for her. And you can see their signatures there. Sophia Goebel Hall, she had remarried by then, and Magdalena's father had passed away. And Leo Goebel, who was, I'm sorry, not her father, but her brother. So these two family members came to stand up with her, and she and Ben were married. And they lived happily together for at least 6 years, because we know that in the 1920 census, they were all living together along with Magdalena's 4 children in Tenino in Thurston County. However, we're not sure what happens to Ben Miller after that, because in 1926, she marries another man named Adolf Weiss, or Weiss. Seen it spelled both ways. She did not outlive this particular husband. She died in 1964 at the age of 76, and Adolf Weiss died a few years later. So it gives you a little hope when even an accused murderess can find love again after disappointment. And on that note, we're going to shift gears yet again back to a happier story of longer love. And my fingers are crossed that this will work. So the following video that I'm hoping to share with you is from an oral history that I conducted in January with longtime Issaquah resident Dan Anderson. Dan and his wife Portia moved to Issaquah in the 1970s, and they quickly became very integral parts of the community. They supported the fledgling, at that time, Village Theater. In the 70s, it was fledgling. Of course, now it is it's the second largest theater in Washington State, of course, and we're very proud of it. So Dan was a physicist turned patent attorney who actually worked for a short while with Howard Hughes. He helped to found Master Chorus East Side, which is one of the thriving nonprofits in Issaquah. And he continues at age 92 to be active in the Kiwanis Club, and he will tell you that he has perfect attendance. His wife, Portia, was a successful architect in a time period when women were not usually allowed to be successful architects. And when she moved to Issaquah, she helped to found Issaquah's chapter of the American Association of University Women. So I could talk a long time about these two remarkable individuals. But one of the things about them that I found so remarkable when I sat down and talked to Dan was the way Dan spoke about his wife, Portia, and their love story. So I'm going to share a few clips from this video. And I think Marilyn is here with us tonight. So Marilyn, I apologize, but you also appear in this video. So if I were better at editing video, I would have figured out how to edit Marilyn and I out of this oral history video, or how to set Zoom so that we didn't show up. But I did not know that then. So if you are someone that has video editing skills and would like to volunteer for the Issaquah History Museums, let me know. And Marilyn, my apologies to you for not checking in before I included you in this little video experiment, but hopefully you'll agree with me that the results are worth having to scrutinize our own faces on screen for a little while. So fingers crossed that this will work.
I guess I was a sophomore in high school. I guess about that. And then when I was a senior, Portia came back, and Portia's family came back, and so we just immediately hit it off, but that and then of course I was drafted, so I got out of high school and in the Navy, But we were sweethearts from the day the day she came back from California with her family. A buddy of mine lived across the street from her, and he said to me, "Hey, this neat gal just came back, and there's a school dance, a big special school dance that night." And he said, "Why don't you? She's just back. Why don't you take her to the thing?" And I said, "Well, you sure." So anyway, that he worked that out, and of course we did. We were immediate sweethearts. We just really hit it off, and of course I was then drafted. But during that time, I spent all my leave time, I was based in the Atlantic on the flagship of the Atlantic Fleet as an electronic technician, and with every opportunity I had, weekends, while I was in the Navy, and while I was in the Navy, she spent 1 year at Duke because her family was determined she was going to be a lawyer. Therefore, she said nothing doing, but they insisted, they forced her. So she went 1 year, and then she revolted. She said she was going to architecture school. She'd never played with dolls. When she was a kid, she played with blocks and drew drawings of houses and so forth. She was really different. And so at her second year, she revolted and said, even if she had to pay her own way and go in debt, so forth, she was going to Ann Arbor and going to architecture school. When she applied, they wanted to talk to her. They said, we can't deny you. Your grades are so good. If you want in, why you have to put you in? But we've never had a woman in here, and there's no facilities for women, and you'll never get a job. You're smart enough. You may get through, through architecture school, but you'll never get a job. Well, she was halfway through architecture school when she had a good job, and this just never looked back.
Good for her.
She was outstanding. She had a practice that extended from Southern California all the way up the coast and way up into Alaska. She was just an outstanding practice.
And what year did you two get married? Do you remember?
The day I should have graduated from MIT was our wedding day.
Okay.
I wanted to be married. I just wanted to be married, and she said, no. Let's wait till she graduated in January or February because her architecture school took longer. And I graduated on May 31st of 1952, and she had graduated a few months earlier. But that day was our wedding day, May 31st, 1952.
So Dan and Portia raised 3 children together and had 5 grandchildren at the time that video was taken. They spent their early married life in California, where they both started their successful careers. And then they decided to move to the Puget Sound area and picked Issaquah as their home. And as I said, they became integral parts of the community. And Dan and Portia were together until her passing in 2019. So they were married for 67 years and in love for more than 70. So love may never end, but life does. And the clip I'm going to share now features Dan talking about the process of saying goodbye to his wife at the end of her life. It's very moving. It's not necessarily inherently sad, but if you are feeling especially tenderhearted tonight, and you want to take a 5-minute break and come back and join us when we get to Jake and Minnie, then this would be a good time to go I don't know, you know, take care of that 5-minute household task you've been trying to do. So for the rest of you, here's Dan talking about Portia.
She published that to the family. And then as it got closer, like within a year, she published in writing to the family a decree about how she wanted her death to be celebrated. She said, not after I die. Let's celebrate. They're not let's. She said, we will celebrate my death before I die, and I want to be a part of that celebration. And then she specified that, and that's kind of took care of itself. The family heard that and understood it, and they didn't go around weeping. They joyfully spent time with her and enjoyed the value of spending that time with her, and it was because they were all right here.
Mhm.
It just was so great. They just spent so much more time with her than they would have if they hadn't known and hadn't had that decree about what she wanted. Anyway, that's the way it was, and we just the immediate family and some very close friends of, but very close. It was really all immediate family. Only about 11 or 12 people.
Mhm.
And so we went there, and her request was to spread her ashes around the home site where Scott was already starting his building operations, and then she requested that we spread her ashes, and then that we each, and forgive me, but we each spread. That was the only time there was any weeping, and I'm just recalling of it as making weeping. But she then, after spreading her ashes, she wanted us each to say goodbye.
Mhm.
And as I say, that was moving.
I bet.
But otherwise, there was just no sadness in her death. Everybody was grateful that she had prescribed that we celebrate it that way, and it worked. It just everybody complied, and
I think that's a remarkable way to face your death, to have that kind of a strength of will to make those kinds of decisions and to share them with your family. And I'm glad that she had time to do that.
Incidentally, she put up such a great front here. People were so surprised when, because she didn't broadcast to anybody else, only to the family that she was new to. And she would, in the latter maybe month, she always went to the dining room for meals. But in the latter month, she would let me push her in a thing, but not inside the dining room. She would park it outside the dining room, and then she would walk into the dining room. And that until the last few days. But 2 days before, she died on Sunday night, and like it was on Friday, we knew that it was very, very, very close, and we said that to each other. It is very close. She was so short of breath, and that was the main symptom. She just couldn't breathe deeply enough to get breath. The congestive heart failure, that's the nature of it. It presses so hard on that main pump that it can't pump enough blood up into the brain. So we consciously said this is very close now, within a day or two, and because she was, yeah. So that was it, and so we said let's say our goodbye, and we did, and it was joyful. Neither one of us had any shadow of a tear, not at all. we talked about it, and we talked about how lucky we were. We had actually grown up together. We were still kids when we were sweethearts, and we went through 7 years of my being in the Navy. But every chance I had, or Navy or college, and every chance that I had, I spent with her, not with my family. So anyway, we were recalling all that, and how we were saying over and over again how lucky we were that things had worked out where we grew up together and recognized our love, and it didn't keep us from, both of us dated I want to say vociferously, we dated like the best of them throughout college. We didn't, and each of us knew about, but there was never a question of who was dead. And as we dated other people, we'd often tell them, hey, if you got to realizing somebody else was serious, well, you'd let them know that, hey, let's have fun. But so anyway, it was a great, blessed, the way we managed it, and giving her most of the credit for the way we managed it. It just couldn't have been better.
And that is the story of Dan and Portia. And I've just felt so privileged to be able to witness his conversation and his memories about his wife. So now we move on to the last couple of the evening, Jake and Minnie. So this is Jake and Minnie right here. Minnie Wilson and Jake Schomburg were two kind of quintessential Issaquah sweethearts. Minnie was the granddaughter of a hotel keep, who had a hotel on the corner of today's Front and Sunset, where today we have a gas station. Minnie got her teacher's training when she was a young lady, and she worked in Issaquah as a teacher as well as a bookkeeper. Jake was the child of German immigrants. His parents operated the Schomburg's Bakery on Front Street. Jake was a full decade older than Minnie. So the most of what we know about the couple comes from their correspondence during World War I. The letters that we're featuring tonight were written between Minnie and Jake when he was sent overseas for World War I. So a number of us, staff and volunteers, have had an opportunity to work with Minnie's letters in some capacity or another. And I think I really fell in love with Minnie and Jake as a couple when I read a letter that Minnie wrote to him that referenced an axe head that she'd seen in the window of Lewis Hardware that she thought would be just perfect for him, and she was going to buy it as soon as she saved up her money. In another letter, Minnie talks about how it's been a long time since she's been fishing and she's not sure who she misses more, Jake or her fishing pole. So these kinds of comments just really show this sort of Issaquah pragmatism mixed in with the affection and sort of the effects of living in a very salt of the earth, hunting and fishing kind of community. So this is what their correspondence looked like. This is one of Minnie's letters. You can see up in the upper left corner, it says letter 28. So Minnie and Jake had a numbering system for their letters so that they could keep track of who was writing to what letter at what time. And so we see some numbers on a lot of their letters. So in this letter, she's writing about how she's having a hard time getting the frosting on his birthday cake to set up, because she is baking him a birthday cake to ship off to him in the mail. His birthday was coming up on October 4th. And this is what Jake's letters looked like. This is one of his letters from Brest, France. And he's letting her know that they have finally stopped moving, and this is about the muddiest place he's ever seen in his life. So now that you have a little bit of an introduction to the young couple, we're going to hear more about their romance directly from their letters. And again, I'm going to turn this over to Melissa Graham and Tyler Lombardo.
Thank you. This is from Camp Lewis, Tacoma, on July 31st, 1918. Sweetheart, I know it was a long time in writing, but honey, I just couldn't help it. They kept us so busy I didn't have a minute to write. The first day I was here, I was on KP. We didn't get through till 9 o'clock, of course. I would have had lots of time after that, but would have had to have done it in the dark. You know, the lights go out in this burg at 9 o'clock. Anything that is done after that has to be done in the dark. This would be a great place for spooners. Everything is so nice and dark. Just the place for us two, don't you think, honey? I would give just about anything to have my little sweetheart in my arms for just one little minute. I bet you would remember it, at least until I got out of quarantine. And then after that, I would love you. I don't know how much that would be, but it would be all that is in me. You know how much that would be. All the love in the world and just a little bit more. Well, getting a little bit mushy, don't you think? You're a soldier.
Issaquah, July 30th, 1918. Dearest boy, your letter just came. Wasn't it a long time getting here, but I am so happy now. I've waited for every mail since Saturday, and it was hard to be brave when it didn't come. I knew you'd write as soon as you could. Everyone in town asks about you. It has been months, it seems, since I saw you. I can stick it out during the day, but every night I have my little cry. You won't scold me for that, will you, dear? Because, honey boy, I love you so much. Better than all the world. Sweetheart, I know you are going to be a big success in the army. Perhaps you won't be a general yet for a few months, but you'll be all of the rest of the Issaquah boys. I know because you have it in you. You are a real man, and I surely am proud of you wherever I go. Honey, let us know if there is anything at all you want, and we'll send it to PDQ. Are you going to wait to get my letters before you write? That will mean an awful wait. I am not going to do that. I'm going to write every other day at least, because, honey, 4 days is too long to wait to hear from you. Are you still thinking of the big question? You said you want to make me happy. I am perfectly miserable now, and there is only one way to make me really happy. I'm not going to mention the subject again, but dear, it will have to be when you come out of quarantine, or else not until this war is over. Possibly never. I love you and want you so. With all my love and kisses, Minnie.
Camp Lewis, August 4th, 1918. Dearest girl, this is Saturday night, and I am blue as anybody can be. You know, this is the second Saturday night that I have been away from you. I can stand it weekdays, that is, I can get by with hard fighting. But when Saturday night comes, I want my little girl. Sweetheart, I always did miss you, but never as I do tonight. Well, dear, I guess I'd better cut out this lovesick stuff. If I don't, I'm liable to rain out of the eyes, as the boys call it over here. But before I forget, I want you to send me one of your pictures. You know I told you I wanted one. Now don't forget, dearest, will you? That is all I can think of just now, so we'll close with love and kisses for the best little girl in the world. J.H.S.
So in spite of all the sweetness in these early letters, there was one bone of contention between the couple. Prior to Jake's departure, Minnie tried to convince him to marry before he went overseas. And Jake hesitated, not wanting to leave behind a young wife who could easily become a widow. So although Jake was now at boot camp at Camp Lewis, Minnie had not given up hope that they still might marry before he was shipped out overseas. So if she only could get to Camp Lewis in time.
Issaquah, August 10th, 1918. Dear Jake, your Nick came this morning, and oh, Jake, do you mean what you said? My God, no, boy, you can't mean it. After the war is before me, everywhere I look in that letter. You don't mean it. Please say you don't. You're breaking my heart. Jake, I can't see very well to write this. I'm trying hard not to cry, but you know what you are doing if you insist on waiting. Jake, I have all to gain or lose. As you said, it makes no difference to you. So why should you break my heart?
Dear Minnie, I received your letter and really don't see what I have done that you should answer my letter in that manner. I have done everything I thought would please you. But I guess I don't know how. I will never learn, I guess. But that isn't my fault, dear. I don't know how. It's the same old story. Do the best I know how, and I am never right.
And on this sorrowful note, do the best I know how and am never right, Jake caved, thinking that his company would remain at Camp Lewis for at least a few more weeks. So Jake gives Minnie the go-ahead, and on August 15th, Minnie begins her trip to Camp Lewis. Minnie's next letter tells what happened then.
Issaquah, August 16th, 1918. Sweetheart mine. Oh, honey, what am I going to do now you are gone? I don't know. If I had only seen you before you left, it wouldn't be quite so hard. But that can't be done now, so I will have to try and bear it. I just got home from Tacoma. You see, dear, as soon as I got your letter last Wednesday telling me I could come see you before you shipped out, I got ready and left Thursday morning for Tacoma. I wrote a letter that would get to camp on Thursday, telling you to meet at the bus station. And when you weren't there, I felt that something was wrong. I went to headquarters and asked where to find the 35 company. He said, don't feel too badly, little lady, if you don't find him. I knew then it was too late, but I had to be sure. He told me he was sure you had gone. He went to the order room to find out. And when he came out and told me, sweetheart, I just stood there and cried. I'm heartbroken, honey. I couldn't help it. The boys there tried to comfort me and were very nice to me. But, oh, dearest, I can't even look at a soldier. It breaks my heart because the one I love best in all the world has gone so far from me. Honey boy, if anyone ever loved a man, I certainly love you. It seems I can't live now you are gone, but I'll try to be brave. And you try too, won't you, sweetheart? Don't worry, dear, that you didn't marry me before you left. When you get back, your little girl will be waiting to be your wife. Jake, dearest, will you do me a favor? The first time you can, will you please have your photo taken and send it to me? I want to see your uniform. I'll tell you, sweetheart, men are going to be scarcer than hen's teeth in this county, young and old. I think the little French girls are getting the best of us on that question. I wonder if you will meet some French girl and learn to love them better than the girl you left behind. I would hate to think I was going to be one of the girls who waited in vain. Will I be?
Camp Fremont, August 20th, 1918. Dear sweetheart, I am getting awful lonesome. I haven't had a letter for about a week, but I know it isn't your fault, dear. The mail hasn't had time to get here yet. I wrote to Camp Lewis and told them that if there was any mail for me there, to send it down here. I hope that there will be at least 2 letters, for your letters sure do make the world look bright to me. I've read your letters at least a dog-ears times in the past week. I was never so lonesome in all my life as I have been since I left you, the depot in dear old Seattle. How's the weather up there? This California weather doesn't make a hit with me. The nights are cool, but the days are hotter than dews, and the dust is knee-deep and the water's warm. When things come hard, all I have to do is think of you, sweetheart. Then things don't look so bad.
Issaquah, September 1st, 1918. Dear sweetheart, do you know that it is just 3 years since we first went together? 3 of the happiest years of my life, all but the last 5 weeks. But I am very, very thankful for all the years I've had you and won't complain about our little time apart. Why, it's worth your being gone to have such dandy letters. You surely know how to write love letters, and I know you mean every word of it. If I am ever so blue or lonesome, when your letter comes, it drives it all away. And oh, honey, how I love to get them. I have every one you have ever written to me. I don't know what would become of me if it weren't for your letters, and they have been coming every day lately.
Camp Fremont, September 7th, 1918. Dearest, do you ever go out fishing? If you do, write and tell me about it. I often think about the times when we used to go out fishing. Didn't we have lots of fun? I hear we will be moved sometime this month. Wouldn't it be great if they moved us back to Camp Lewis? I sure do hope they will. Wouldn't that be some luck for us? I would start out and walk back, if they let me. I bet I would make that old road smoke getting back to you. Well, sweetheart, it is time for the lights to go out, so we'll have to close with all my love for my little wife.
Issaquah, September 12th, 1918. Sweetheart, honey, you're spoiling me with all the nice things you say about me. Why, when you get home, you'll have to keep telling me all these nice things. And if I burn the potatoes, make heavy biscuits, and all the rest of the things a bride is supposed to do, you'll have to smile and say you like it. If you don't, I'll weep and say you don't love me anymore. So there, honey boy, see what you've let yourself in for. But it is too late now, so you'll have to keep up the good work. Can you call me your wife? Why, I should say you can. I wish I really was, so that the world could know. But I am just the same, honey. All we need is the final paper so others will know. Honey, that is the only thing of all the things that you have done that I regret. Why didn't you take me before you went? We will never have another chance until you come back, and that may be such a long time.
Camp Mills, New York, October 27th, 1918. Dear sweetheart, I received your letter today, and you didn't seem to understand my last letter. I expected that much, but Sweetheart, I couldn't make it any plainer. We were getting ready to leave, and they told us that all of our mail would be censored. So you see, honey, I couldn't tell you that we were going to. I thought if I told you not to write until you heard from me again, you'd figure out that we were going to move. But from the way your letter read, you must have thought that I was sore about something. I know I didn't write a very loving letter, but nevertheless, dearest, I love you more than I can tell. So don't let such ideas enter your little head. You don't do it again, will you, honey? You can't imagine how it makes me feel when I get a letter like the last one. I'm not tired of you. Dearest, there is no one in this wide world that could take your place. You don't know the ways of the army. A person can't say what they mean. You have to say and do just what they tell you. Dearest, I wish I was coming back to you instead of going away from you.
So there's a break in the letters from Minnie between October and December. And we know that she was writing because Jake mentions the letters that she wrote in his letters, but for some reason, they didn't make it into our collection. So maybe he wasn't able to keep them. Maybe he had to leave them behind in Europe. Maybe she decided not to donate them to the museums. Maybe she decided not to keep them. We don't really know, but we don't hear from Minnie for a little while.
France, November 22nd, 1918. I'm in a little town in France. There isn't much I can tell you, except that I am well and hope that I'll be back with you soon. Say, girl, you ought to see me with my oversea haircut. My head looks like a billiard ball. Did you get the card telling you that I had landed safe? France, December 1st, 1918. Dear little girl, we have stopped moving at last, and from what I can find out, we are here for a while. This is the muddiest place I've ever seen. This is where Napoleon trained his troops. Some of the buildings are still here and being used by our boys. If you see any of the folks, tell them that I am well, and we'll write again soon. I am still lonesome. France, December 6th, 1918. Dearest, I received your letter this morning, and say, little girl, you don't know how good it made me feel to know that you were over your sick spell. In your last letter, you said you might have the flu. I have sure been worried about you. I was almost afraid to hear from home. I had that feeling that something had happened, but your letter cleared away all doubts. So take good care of yourself. I expect to find you in good health when I return home. I don't know how soon that will be, but hope it won't be long. Bill, the boy that stayed in the tent with me in Camp Fremont, he got a letter telling him that his wife had died. Spanish flu was the cause of her death. I sure feel sorry for him. The flu is a thing of the past over here. At least I haven't heard of many cases lately. I bet they had some time in the States when they heard the war was over. I was in this camp when we got the news, and we didn't have a chance to celebrate. I will wait. I'll wait until I come back, and when we can celebrate it together. With all my love, your soldier. France, December 25th, 1918. Dear Minnie, this is Christmas Day. Last Christmas was a merry one, but I can't say that much for this one. Of course, everything is as nice as one can expect in this case, but I don't help very much. 4 months ago, I would have bet that we would have spent this day together, but as usual, things turned out just the opposite. Germany, July 16th, 1919. Dearest, arrived in Germany last night. Here's the part that is hard to believe. Instead of putting us in barns, they took us to the largest hotel in town and told us this is where we would stay, as long as we were stationed here. It's almost too good to believe. We have mineral baths, which we have charge of. We can take one anytime we feel like it, and I sure feel like it after that 4-day ride in a boxcar. I can't think of anything else to write about, so we'll close for this time with all my love. Your soldier.
Issaquah, August 13th, 1919. It must be a very fine place. You boys are sure in luck to be put up in such fine quarters. If you can find a picture of your hotel, send it please so I can see what it looks like. Say, they surely must be some magnificent baths. Take 2 or 3 baths for me, Jake, and think hard of me while you take them. If you do, I may get some good out of them. Do you think I will? I'll write again soon, so I'll stop now. With all my love for the only boy in the world. Issaquah, August 27th, 1919. I have a hunch you are on your way home, and say I hope it is so. If you aren't on your way home now, they'd better be starting, as they are going to have all the drafted men home by October. It sure is a rotten deal they are giving your boys, and no one can deny it. Honey, I want to ask a favor of you. If you do get this letter before you leave, will you bring a pair of wooden shoes from Germany or France? I just want them as a souvenir. They're going to have a big celebration and dance at home on Labor Day. My honey, I wish you were going to be there to help me celebrate. But never mind, we will have one grand celebration when you do get back. All my love, your sweetheart, Minnie.
Camp Merritt, New Jersey, September 4th, 1919. Dearest, this won't be much of a letter, as I don't feel much like writing. I am more disgusted now than I ever have been. I thought when we left Germany that we was on our road home, but not so. They have stuck us here with the 1st Division. I guess you've seen in the paper where they are going to parade in New York on the 10th and in Washington, D.C. on the 16th. That means that if luck is with us, we might get out of here somewhere about the last of this month. Did you get my telegram? I'm going to give you my address, but don't think it will be any use for you. Your answer may be gone by the time your letter gets here. Tell Mother that her boy is feeling fine and expects to be home in the near future. I can't think of anything else to say. I'll know that I love my little girl all the same. We'll close for this time with all my love, your soldier.
And so Jake returned to Minnie in the fall of 1919, and the two of them were married on December 29th, 1919 in Seattle. And you can see their marriage certificate and the notice from the Issaquah Press. And although they'd never had children, Minnie and Jake spent many happy years together, punctuated by a number of hunting and fishing trips. And they were married from 1919 until Jake passed away in 1973 at the age of 87. Minnie lived another 20 years. She passed away in 1993 at the age of 96. And that is our last couple of the evening. So what have we learned tonight? We've talked about a lot of long marriages, which makes me wonder, Karen and I actually had an interesting conversation about long relationships or shorter, better relationships. How have expectations about relationships changed over the last 100 years? How have societal expectations about marriage changed? We don't all necessarily get married anymore. Some of us choose not to. What hasn't changed when it comes to love? You can put your answers in the chat. You can raise your hand and Karen can call on you. You can sit there thoughtfully and just contemplate it if you'd like. We don't have to be participatory about it, but I think it's an interesting question. Marilyn adds that Minnie was a classmate and a close friend of Shaler Bennett. Minnie was pretty well known to a lot of people in town in a variety of different ways, partly because she taught and partly because she was also in charge of the draft board for World War II, which I think must have been interesting to reflect on, having had that same experience in World War I. All right, anyway, I think there are a lot of interesting universals when it comes to love, but I think that love and relationships have changed an awful lot in the last 100 years. And so thanks for coming along with us and contemplating love in Issaquah. In March, we are doing a history happy hour about our place on Earth, exploring Issaquah's natural environment. So we'll take a look at some of the natural and man-made forces that have changed Issaquah's landscape over the years, including glaciers, coal deposits, flooding creeks, and other factors. And we'll also have Tom Anderson from the Issaquah Alps Trails Club presenting on some hikes that you can take to get a better look at some of Issaquah's natural beauty. We will be sending out a brief survey tomorrow, along with some updates and additional information on things. So if you have any questions that didn't get answered tonight, feel free to email us or pop them into the chat and we can get answers back to you tomorrow. Our website is a great place to go to sign up for our mailing list or to check out more information about Issaquah. And finally, if you enjoyed this presentation, you might enjoy following us on social media. We feature all kinds of fascinating photographs, artifacts, observations, snippets, and stories. So I definitely recommend checking that out. And okay.
A big thank you to all our actors this evening.
Yes, thank you so much to our actors. Our fabulous, as always, volunteers.
Mhm.
That was incredible. Thank you.
Yay.
Yay. Thanks to everybody for joining in. If you've got any Issaquah love stories that you want to share, this is a great time to do it. Otherwise, feel free to log off with that warm feeling of love and appreciation of love.
Erica, before I go, I can fix that video if you want it fixed. So
yeah, that would be helpful.
I have an application that can zoom in on his interview, and you won't see anything but him.
That would be awesome. I will send you the interview file.
Okay, and if it's too big to send by email, you can use WeTransfer, but just send me an email, see if it works, and I'll follow up with you, and we can get that done. It won't take me but a few minutes to get it right.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
My pleasure.
You are multi-talented.
Well, I'd love to play some nature music for the March 25th event. You know how I roll.
Oh yeah, that's a great idea. That would be some fun. That would beat my my opening patter where I, just kind of.
I do whole concerts of nature music and stuff with Ann Fletcher. I don't know if you know her. She's Issaquah, part of the PCA. But,
yeah, I do know. Yeah. I know the name anyway.
So she and I are on the Climate Action Committee at our church in Bellevue. So
okay.
Yeah. So I'd love. So if you want some music, let's chat.
Okay, that sounds great. So I see that Andy Pickering is here, and I know that he is related to Rob Pickering.
Hi, Andy Pickering.
Hopefully, I don't mean to call him out, but hopefully, if he knows what year Ray Pickering died, that would be super.
I'm gonna talk to my grandfather, his brother. I'll give him a call tomorrow. And
awesome. Thank you. I hope you enjoyed the program.
Yeah. Did you know? Did you know your relative who we talked about tonight?
Oh yeah, definitely. Definitely met him many times. I live in Tacoma, so I'm not far.
Did we evoke him at all for you?
Oh yeah.
That's really cool to know.
It was great. Thank you.
Oh, our pleasure.
Thanks for coming.
Thanks for coming, everybody.
Sharing so I can see faces again.
Yeah, there you go.
They've changed Zoom somehow. I couldn't see faces the whole time. It's a little frustrating.
It was very strange.
I like being able to see the faces.
I just wanted to say that the acting was really awesome and that it is so much fun to be able to watch theater. I know it's not on stage, but just to hear that familiar sound, that theater sound and the voice, it was really nice. You guys did a really good job.
Yeah,
well, we're very lucky in our volunteers.
These are my kids from international school in Bellevue. And they're going to be doing a musical before too. Well, one of them is. One of them didn't do it with me this time, but yeah. But he just played John Proctor in The Crucible. Yeah, she played Mary Warren in The Crucible. It was fun. So yeah, we're doing our best to keep theater going. Absolutely, it's hard, but we're doing it.
Oh, good. And I can see the little recording thing. That makes me. That's always comforting. I get nervous when I can't see that. All right, well, I'm gonna log off and end this whole thing.
All righty.
Nobody's got any questions or
thanks, guys.
wants to play Stump the Historian. Thank you so much for participating tonight. Again, volunteers.
Happy belated birthday, Erica.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that. It was a fabulous birthday.
Yes, happy birthday, Erica.
Thank you. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah.
All right.
Bye.
Good night, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye.